Compton, California, 1979. A 16-year-old girl hears gunshots outside her window. She doesn't call the police. She goes to her father's hiding spot. She finds his guns. She puts on a jumpsuit, a ski mask, and a blue rag around her neck to blend in with the enemy. She gets in a car and drives straight into Crip territory. That night, a 16-year-old girl became the most feared person on those streets. Not the most feared girl. The most feared person. Now imagine that same energy, that same refusal to back down, applied not to a gang, but to an entire drug empire. What happens when a woman decides she is not going to hold the stash while a man gets the credit? What happens when she decides she is going to run the operation herself? What happens when the kingpin is a queen? From Compton to Miami, from Los Angeles to Philadelphia, from Columbus, Ohio to the streets of the 1920s Harlem. These women didn't wait for a man to give them a seat at the table. They built their own table, and when the men around them got arrested, when they cooperated with federal prosecutors, when they got killed or got addicted or simply couldn't handle the weight of what they had started, the women kept going. Today, what happens when women take the role of drug kingpin? The real story, the real women, the empires nobody told you about, starting now. Number 6, Sylvia Nun, Compton, California, 1979. Let's go back to where we started. Sylvia Nun grew up in Compton when it was still a middle-class black neighborhood. Her father, Willie, was a former professional boxer. Her mother worked to keep the family stable. They had a new car every year. They were doing everything right. Then the city changed. Racial tensions after the Watts riots of 1965 began reshaping Compton block by block. White families fled. The city's infrastructure buckled. By the time Sylvia was a child, the neighborhood where her family had worked hard to build a life had become something very different. Her father was convicted of drug possession and sent to prison when Sylvia was 12 years old. Without him, the household unraveled. Her older brother Marcus, whose street name was China Dog, became one of the founding members of the Compton Bloods. The gang became the family structure that filled the space her father left. And Sylvia, watching her brother, watching the streets, learned everything he knew. By 9 years old, she was already the youngest girl hanging out at the point, already carrying a weapon. At 11, Marcus's homeboys put her through a store window to rob a gas station cash register. She took the money, then demanded her cut. They gave her change. She said no and made them give her real money at 11 years old. By 1979, when Marcus was shot by a car full of Crips on his way home, Sylvia did not cry. She went to her father's hiding spot, found his guns, put on a jumpsuit and a ski mask and a blue rag around her neck, got into a car with the homeboys, and drove into enemy territory. What she did that night sealed her transformation. Through the 1980s, Sylvia Nun earned the name Rambo through acts of violence that made other gangsters, men who had been in the game for years, speak her name carefully. She dressed as a man to do her work. Black shoes, black socks, black pants, a black shirt, a beanie, a red rag tucked underneath it. She would finish her work, get back in the car, and throw the clothes in neutral. By the time anyone was looking, she was a girl again, driving normally, unreachable. She gave her targets a choice. You want to get shot with the .357, or you want me to use the .45. She was serious. By 1980, Rambo was the top dog among hundreds of female gang members in Compton. She ran the Piru Blood Set's female wing with the authority that most men never achieve. Then, crack cocaine arrived, and everything changed. The drug that was flooding Compton's streets became the thing that destroyed Sylvia from the inside. She got addicted to the same crack her organization was selling. The woman who had made men afraid became someone who would hide drugs in her nephew's diaper to get past police. In April of 1991, walking home from a store, she was arrested on an outstanding warrant. An officer offered her a deal: go to jail, or tell us how your gang moves drugs. Sylvia cooperated. She told them what she knew. Then she fled to Las Vegas. She bought a bus ticket with $500 she earned in one night. She changed her life. She married a former sheriff. She became a Christian. She opened basketball camps. Sylvia Nun never ran a drug empire. She never controlled a city's product supply. She never moved kilograms across state lines. She was something different. The most dangerous female soldier the streets of Compton ever produced. And the opening proof that what we are about to tell you is true. Black women in America's underground economy were never just accessories. They were the engine. Number 5. Avonda Black Girl Dowling, Miami, Florida, 1985 to 1999. Miami, Overtown. In the 1980s, Overtown was one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in America. It was also one of the most historically significant black neighborhoods in the South, the Harlem of Miami, where Ella Fitzgerald and Count Basie and Billie Holiday had stayed when segregation prevented them from sleeping in the hotels where they performed. By the 1980s, that history was buried under crack cocaine and poverty and a drug war that was consuming the entire neighborhood. Into that environment, Avonda Dowling built a drug operation that ran for 14 consecutive years. Her street name was Black Girl. She started in the early 1980s, married to a man named Jerry Jackson, who was already running a drug business in Overtown. She learned the operation from the inside. She understood the supply chain. She understood the territory. She understood the specific geography of Overtown streets and which buildings and corners could be controlled and which could not. When Jackson's operation ended, Avonda did not walk away. She took what she had learned and built her own organization. At 11 Terrace and 2nd Avenue Northwest in Overtown, she established what federal investigators would later call her drug hole. Several apartments in one building, one apartment for the drug supply, one for preparing packages, a rotating staff of 10 to 12 workers at any given time, plus several chief lieutenants. Her most feared enforcer was a man named Robert Lee Sawyer, known as Ra-Ra. He killed people who encroached on her territory, on her orders. She was the boss. He was the weapon. In a world where men ran everything, Avonda Dowling commanded men. She also made a business decision that few male operators ever made. Instead of competing purely on price, she controlled quality. Her product was consistent. Her operation was reliable. Drug dealers who came to Overtown to resupply came to her specific hole because they knew what they were getting. She built customer loyalty in a market where most operators never got past transaction. She also used drugs directly as currency, trading product for weapons rather than cash. AK-47s, Mac 10s. She was building an arsenal alongside an empire. By 1993, the Booby Boys came for her. Kenneth Booby Williams had built a cocaine operation that moved product across 12 states through the Bahamas and Panama. He was one of the most sophisticated drug traffickers in Miami's history. He wanted Overtown. Avonda said no. What followed was a 5-year gang war that paralyzed some of Miami's poorest neighborhoods. On her orders, Ra-Ra, Bam, and other lieutenants drove through Miami looking specifically for Booby Boys to kill. The Booby Boys retaliated. Bodies dropped on both sides. Federal prosecutors would later describe the gang war as leaving a trail of killings in Miami's most vulnerable communities from 1993 to 1998. Avonda Dowling did not lose that war. She ran her drug hole from 1985 to 1999, 14 years, in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in one of the most violent cities in America. Federal investigators described her as ruthless, cold. They said she had to be, to rise to the level she did in the cutthroat world of Miami drug trafficking. She was eventually convicted and sentenced to federal prison. She was released years later. The woman who ran Overtown for 14 years, who went to war with the Booby Boys and didn't blink, who built a cocaine empire in a neighborhood that had once hosted jazz legends and held it longer than almost any male operator in Miami's history. Avonda black girl Dowling. Number 4, Jemeker Thompson, Los Angeles, California, 1986. South Central Los Angeles, 1986. A young black woman named Jemeker Thompson is still in high school. She is already moving 3 to 4 kilograms of cocaine every single week, 3 to 4 kilos per week, in high school. She had grown up in South Central watching her family struggle, evicted from their home when she was 8 years old. That eviction left a specific mark on Jemeker Thompson, a burning desire to never be put out of anywhere by anyone ever again. To have money, to have control, to never be at the mercy of a situation she didn't create. She started collecting money for her boyfriend's marijuana operation, learned how the business worked from the collection end, who paid on time, who didn't, how disputes were resolved, what loyalty looked like, and what its absence looked like. Then she started selling cocaine herself. She moved quickly. Within months, she was generating revenue that most operators in her neighborhood couldn't approach. She hosted hair shows, legitimate public events, as a front for her cocaine operation. Moving while in plain sight, building a business that looked like entrepreneurship from the outside and was empire building from the inside. She married Anthony Mosley, known as Daff, and expanded into crack cocaine distribution. The operation grew beyond Los Angeles. Federal investigators would later document cocaine distributors working for Jemeker Thompson in multiple cities across the United States. Not just LA, multiple cities. A national network built and managed by a woman from South Central who had started collecting drug money as a teenager. The DEA could not figure out how she was doing it, not because she was hiding in plain sight, because they were not looking for a woman. The assumption, embedded in federal law enforcement, embedded in the drug trade itself, embedded in the imagination of every competitor on the street, was that women did not operate at this level. That assumption was Jemeker Thompson's most powerful weapon. While investigators were looking for the man who was running the operation, she was the operation. Her former boyfriend eventually cooperated with authorities. The federal investigation closed in. In 1991, Jemeker Thompson went on the run. She stayed gone for 2 years. 2 years as a federal fugitive while managing the continued operation of a multi-city cocaine network. In 1993, she made her choice. Her son was graduating from 6th grade. She came back for his graduation ceremony. Federal agents were waiting. They had anticipated exactly this, that a mother's love would bring back the woman that the DEA could not find in 2 years of active searching. She was arrested at her son's 6th grade graduation, tried, convicted, sentenced to 15 years. She went to prison, served 12 years, and came out in 2005 as an evangelical minister. She wrote a memoir, appeared on Netflix's Drug Lords series, became the inspiration for the character Aunt Luann on the television series Snowfall, the critically acclaimed drama about the crack epidemic in South Central Los Angeles. The government couldn't find her for 2 years. Hollywood turned her into a television character, Jemeker Thompson, the crack queen of Los Angeles, who they couldn't see coming because they weren't looking for a woman. Number 3, Thelma Wright, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 1986. Philadelphia, August 1986. Police find a body rolled up in a carpet in a house near Germantown, shot once in the head. The body is Jackie Wright, one of Philadelphia's top heroin wholesalers, connected to the Black Mafia, a man with enemies in every direction. His wife, Thelma, gets the news. She has a 4-year-old son, no income of her own, a lifestyle that Jackie's drug money had built and maintained. 2 choices: start over with nothing, or take over. Thelma Wright took over. She had grown up in South Philadelphia, Catholic school, loving parents, everything right. She met Jackie Wright when she came back to Philadelphia after Temple University. Fell in love with the lifestyle as much as the man. Understood, from years of being beside him, exactly how the operation worked. When he died, she had the knowledge. She had the connections. She had the relationships with his suppliers and his customers that Jackie had built over years. And she had nothing to lose. She became the primary source of cocaine and heroin in Philadelphia. Built a cross-country supply pipeline, moving product between Philadelphia and Los Angeles using routes and connections that her late husband had established and that she now controlled. She expanded what Jackie had built. At the height of her operation, Thelma Wright was generating more than $400,000 per month. $400,000 monthly. The streets gave her 2 names, Boss Lady and Queenpin. She earned both. She lived carefully. She kept her son insulated from the business, enrolling him in a prestigious private school in South Jersey. She moved her parents into a house in Willingboro, New Jersey, to keep them away from the danger that surrounded everything she was building. She was a drug lord and a mother simultaneously. She ran a national cocaine and heroin operation while making sure her son got a proper education. July 1991. A shootout erupted at a Philadelphia nightclub that Thelma was attending with friends. She walked away unharmed, but the warning registered. Shortly after, one of her major clients was arrested trying to move cocaine through the United States Postal Service. Thelma Wright read both signs correctly. She walked away from the game before the game ended her. In 1991, 5 years after she took over Jackie's operation, she stepped back. She went straight into real estate and a corporate job that paid $19,000 a year after having made $400,000 a month. She wrote a memoir, With Eyes from Both Sides, Living My Life in and Out of the Game. BET produced a series about her story. Mary J. Blige was attached as producer. Thelma Wright, who started with nothing but her dead husband's contacts and her own intelligence, built one of the most profitable drug operations in Philadelphia history, and she walked away before it killed her. Number 2, Vickie Stringer, Columbus, Ohio, 1993, early 1990s. Vickie Stringer grew up in Detroit, middle-class family. Father an engineer, mother a special education teacher. She went to Ohio State University and pledged Delta Sigma Theta. She carried a Bible in her book bag every day of high school. Then she fell in love with a drug dealer. His name was Chino. He ran a crew called the Triple Crown Posse on Columbus's east side. Vickie fell into his world and discovered something that surprised her. She was extraordinarily good at this business. She did not stay because of love. She stayed because of aptitude. She built the Columbus connection for an interstate cocaine and heroin trafficking operation that moved $6 million worth of narcotics every single month, from New York into Ohio, $6 million, monthly, through one woman's operation in Columbus, Ohio. She opened a hair salon on the east side of Columbus as a legitimate front. She wore a $16,000 engagement ring. She lived the life that the operation funded. Then Chino denied paternity of their son and married another woman. Vickie was left alone with a baby and no support, the bills piling up. She sold the hair salon and went deeper into the drug trade. She was eventually arrested after selling 1 kilogram of cocaine to a police informant. $250,000 in cash was in her car at the time of arrest. She accepted a plea deal. 5 years for drug trafficking and money laundering. She went to prison. And in prison, Vickie Stringer wrote a novel. It was called Let That Be the Reason. Partly autobiographical, an unflinching account of the world she had moved through, the drug dealing, the violence, the loyalty and its absence, the specific texture of a life lived in the underground economy. She submitted it to 26 publishers. All 26 rejected it. So she did what she had always done when the legitimate world shut the door on her. She found another way. She called family and friends, asked each one for $100, and raised enough to print 2,500 copies. Then she went out and sold them herself, door to door, on street corners, out of the trunk of her car. The book became a bestseller. She founded Triple Crown Publications with a $5,000 personal loan in 2002. The publishing house grew into one of the most successful African-American publishing companies in the United States. 36 titles, 25 authors, book deals totaling over $3 million that she brokered as a literary agent. Her books made the New York Times bestseller list and the Essence bestseller list. They appeared in Barnes & Noble and in African-American bookstores and on street corners simultaneously. She built a $1.8 million company from a prison cell and the trunk of her car. The woman who had moved $6 million of narcotics monthly through Columbus, Ohio, built a legitimate publishing empire with the same skills, the same hustle, the same relationship building, the same understanding of what her audience needed and how to reach them that she had used to build her drug operation. She just applied them to books instead. Vickie Stringer, drug lord, federal convict, publisher, New York Times best-selling author. The same woman, different market. Number 1, Stephanie St. Clair, Harlem, New York, 1923 to 1938. The Closer. Before all of them, before Sylvia Nun was born, before crack cocaine existed, before Miami's Overtown was a drug war battlefield, before Jemeker Thompson picked up a phone to collect her boyfriend's drug money, before Thelma Wright took over her dead husband's operation, before Vickie Stringer wrote a single word in a federal prison cell. There was Stephanie St. Clair, Martinique, born in 1886. She arrived in New York City in 1911 on a Caribbean steamship with almost nothing, spoke French-accented English, a black woman from the Caribbean in a city that had very specific ideas about what she was allowed to do and who she was allowed to become. She watched those ideas carefully, and then she ignored all of them. In 1912, she invested $10,000 of her own savings into a numbers parlor in Harlem. Within 1 year, she had $500,000. In 1 year, from one investment, she expanded, built one of the largest independent policy banks in Harlem, 40 runners on the street, a daily revenue that investigators would later estimate was substantial enough to make her one of the wealthiest black people in New York City. She was not just building a business, she was building a fortress. When corrupt New York Police Department officers tried to extort her, she did not pay. She published their names in black newspapers with documentation. She used the press as a weapon at a time when black voices had almost no access to mainstream media. She made herself visible, made the corruption visible, made the cost of coming after her visible to the entire Harlem community that read those papers. She testified before the Seabury Commission, the government investigation into New York corruption, and named names that powerful men had assumed would never be named by a black woman from the Caribbean who ran a numbers parlor. Then Dutch Schultz came for Harlem. In the early 1930s, after Prohibition ended and the bootleggers needed new revenue streams, Dutch Schultz invaded the Harlem numbers racket with systematic violence. 40 murders, 6 kidnappings, numbers runners disappearing, policy bankers retiring under pressure. The Italian mob cut Harlem's 40 policy banks down to 20 within a year. Almost everyone surrendered. Every man around her fell apart. Stephanie St. Clair did not. She launched a counteroffensive that nobody expected, and nobody had the nerve to fully match. She tipped law enforcement about Schultz's operations, getting $12 million seized from his accounts. She ran public advertisements warning the Harlem community about what Schultz was doing. She made his life so expensive and so complicated that even as he consolidated most of Harlem's numbers racket, he could never fully absorb hers. Then, in October of 1935, Dutch Schultz was shot at the Palace Chop House in Newark, New Jersey. On Lucky Luciano's orders, he died 2 days later. Stephanie St. Clair sent a telegram to his deathbed. It read, "As ye sow, so shall ye reap." That telegram made national headlines. A black woman from Martinique had publicly outlasted the most violent gangster in New York, the man who had murdered 40 people trying to take what she built, the man who had made every other black operator in Harlem surrender. She was still standing. She passed her territory to the man she had trained and elevated, a young enforcer from South Carolina named Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson, who held what she built for the next 40 years. Stephanie St. Clair did not just build an empire. She built the foundation that every black kingpin in Harlem who came after her, Bumpy Johnson, Frank Lucas, Nicky Barnes, built their own empires on top of. She was first. She was toughest. And when Dutch Schultz came for everything she had, she fought him in the newspapers, in the courts, in the streets, and in the end, she outlasted him. Madam Queen, Harlem's original queenpin, the woman who started it all. The thesis: 6 women, 6 cities, 6 completely different eras. Sylvia Nun in Compton, who made men afraid before she was old enough to vote. Avonda black girl Dowling in Miami, who held Overtown for 14 years and went to war with the Booby Boys without blinking. Jemeker Thompson in Los Angeles, who built a national cocaine network that the DEA could not find because they were looking for a man. Thelma Wright in Philadelphia, who took over a dead man's empire and made it bigger than he ever had. Vickie Stringer in Columbus, who moved $6 million of narcotics monthly and then built a publishing house from a prison cell using the exact same skills. And Stephanie St. Clair in Harlem, who built the foundation that every black kingpin in New York history stood on, who outlasted Dutch Schultz, who sent a telegram to his deathbed. Here is what all 6 stories tell you. The underground economy in black America was never exclusively male. It was never exclusively female. It was human, built by human beings who looked at the legitimate world, which had specific and well-documented ideas about what black people, and black women especially, were allowed to build, and found the market that was actually open. The men in these stories got arrested, got killed, got addicted, cooperated with prosecutors, fell apart under pressure. The women kept going, not because they were harder, because they had something to prove that men in the same position never had, that they belonged, that they were real, that what they built was real, that the world and the streets had to take them seriously. They proved it, every single one of them. Subscribe to Bloody Reports. There are 1,000 stories like these that nobody has told the right way yet. This was 6 of them.